The ship floated through space, cold and silent, like a ghost moving between stars. Inside, the lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows over metal floors. Cages lined the walls, cold, narrow, and cruel, and inside one of them, a young alien girl sat with her knees to her chest. Arms wrapped around herself, her skin was pale and bruised, her eyes large and tired. She hadn't eaten in days, and the little water she got tasted like rust. Her clothes were thin, torn from use, barely covering her small frame, chains around. Her wrists were tight, making her skin bleed whenever she moved too much. She didn't speak, not anymore. She had stopped crying too. No one came when she cried, and if they did, it was only to hurt her or laugh at her, so she stayed quiet, still. Like a forgotten doll in a corner, her name. Even she had forgotten how it sounded. The slavers called her it or cargo. To them, she was just weight. Something to sell, something to move from one place to another. Other cages held others like her, some silent, some coughing. Some already dead, no one cared. The guards were cruel and loud. They joked about the price they'd get at the next station, about how weak some products looked, but one figure didn't laugh. One of the guards, at least, he wore the uniform, was a human man. He didn't talk much, and the others didn't notice him much either. But the girl did. He walked differently. His eyes were always moving, watching, counting, listening. He didn't kick the cages or spit at the prisoners, and one time, when he passed by her cage, he looked at her, really looked, not with hate or power, but something else, something softer. The girl blinked, unsure. No one had looked at her like that in years, and in that moment, for a second, she remembered what hope felt like. But then he looked away, and the cold came back. Later that day, the ship changed course. The crew whispered that the next stop was Red Zone 9, a place where no laws existed, where buyers didn't care how old or broken the slaves were, as long as they could breathe or scream. That night, the girl could not sleep. She pressed her forehead against the cage bars, her breath fogging the cold metal. She didn't want to be sold again. Not this time. She wished the ship would crash, or that she could disappear into space. Suddenly, alarms rang through the halls. Red lights flashed, loud sirens screamed. The ship shook slightly, and the crew began running, shouting orders, power loss. Someone yelled, "Deck 3 systems are offline." The girl held her breath, confused, scared. Smoke began to fill the air vents, and metal doors slammed shut across corridors. The guards cursed, slapping control panels and trying to reach the command room. The ship had gone mad, and then he came. The human guard returned, but not as a guard. He wore a new outfit now, dark and armored, with Earth symbols on his chest. He held a weapon in one hand and a small device in the other. He wasn't one of them. He had been hiding in plain sight. He was a soldier and infiltrator, sent to take over the ship. The girl watched as he blasted open the control panel beside her cage. The bars released with a loud clank, and her door slid open slowly. She stayed still, frozen, unsure if this was real or another trick. He knelt in front of her and whispered, "You're free now, but we don't have much time." Still, she didn't move. He looked into her eyes again and said, "Please, come with me. I'm not here to hurt you." His voice was different kind, but urgent. For a long second, the girl didn't move. Then, slowly, she reached out her hand, trembling. He took it gently, pulling her out of the cage. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed against him. Without a word, he lifted her in his arms, holding her like she weighed nothing as he carried her through the smoky hallway. The ship shook again. More alarms, more panic, more fire. But the girl, for the first time in years, didn't feel afraid. She didn't know where he was taking her, or if they would even survive. But his arms were strong, his voice was calm, and for now, she was out of the cage. She closed her eyes against his chest, and for the first time, she felt warm. His name was Jackson Vale, a soldier from Earth, but here, inside the alien slave transport ship, he had gone by another name, Unet. 7. The disguise had worked for 3 weeks. He had studied the crew, the ship's layout, the security systems, and the slave compartments. But nothing had prepared him for the girl in the cage. She was just one among many. Thin and dirty, forgotten. Yet when their eyes met that first day, he felt something crack in his chest. Not pity. Something deeper. Something human. His mission had a simple goal: disable the ship, stop the slave route, and rescue survivors if possible. Earth Command had warned him. This is a one-man op. Don't get attached. But now, as he carried the frail alien girl through the burning corridor, her small hands clinging to his vest, he knew he had already broken that rule. She hadn't spoken again, but she didn't try to escape. Her eyes were wide, her breathing shaky. She didn't trust him yet. But she was choosing to believe, maybe because she had nothing else to hold on to. Maybe because for the first time in her life, someone chose her. Jackson reached a supply room, kicked the door open, and gently laid her on a bench. He scanned her quickly. No broken bones, but bruises, burns, dehydration, and extreme exhaustion. She was in worse shape than he thought. He opened a medkit, injected her with a pain reliever and hydration shot, then wrapped a thermal blanket around her. She watched silently, flinching every time he moved, but she didn't pull away. Name? He asked softly, but she didn't reply, not even a blink. Jackson didn't push. He had seen slaves like her before, survivors with minds shattered by cruelty. It would take time, if time was even something they had. He tapped into his wrist communicator. Command, this is Vale. Phase 1 complete. Ship disruption underway. Civilian found, young female. Possible critical condition. Static replied. Then a voice, Roger, that Vale. Evac route is blocked. You're on your own for now. Proceed to bridge and take over manually. Copy, he whispered, cutting the line. Then he turned back to the girl, who had curled into herself under the blanket. I have to go to the front of the ship, he told her gently. It's not safe here. She didn't move. Jackson looked around and spotted an old maintenance crate. He removed the tools, lined it with padding and a cover, and picked her up again. You can hide in this. No one will see you, he whispered. She hesitated, then gave a weak nod. He placed her inside, closed the lid gently, and pushed it on a hover sled. Now she was cargo. Again, but this time, she was his to protect. The halls of the ship were chaos. Fires sparked from control panels, smoke poured through air vents, and the alien crew ran in every direction. Some guards were shouting orders, others just ran in fear. They had no idea. Their systems were failing because of the quiet human they'd ignored for weeks. Jackson moved fast, sliding past patrols, climbing broken lifts, bypassing locked doors. He shot 2 guards silently with stun rounds and avoided 3 more. The ship had hundreds of compartments, but he knew the path to the control room by heart. He had studied every wire, every route. Every mistake the aliens made, he reached a sealed door and attached a hacking pad. The lock resisted for a moment, then sparked open. The bridge was just ahead. He paused and opened the crate. The girl blinked at him. She looked scared but alert. We're close, he whispered. You? Stay here. She reached out and held his hand weakly. Her eyes asked a question her mouth could not speak. Will you come back? I promise, he whispered. And for the first time, she nodded. Jackson entered the bridge, gun raised. The captain and 2 officers turned, shocked. Who are you?
Oh.
The captain roared, reaching for his blaster. Jackson fired first 1, 2, 3. The guards collapsed, and the captain fell with a scream. Jackson stepped over the bodies and slammed the override switch. He pulled out a chip from his boot and inserted it into the ship's core. Earth Command's virus spread instantly. Lights flickered. Systems rebooted. Control panels shut down every part of the ship engines. Weapons, surveillance was now under his command. He turned back and ran to the crate, opened it. She was still there, watching. It's done. He smiled softly. This ship isn't theirs anymore. She looked at him with wide eyes, not sure what to say. He held out his hand again. Come on. Let's finish this together. This time, she took his hand without fear. And for the first time, she smiled just a little. It was the smallest smile he had ever seen, but it was the beginning of something powerful. The bridge was cold and filled with smoke. The control panels blinked as systems rebooted under Earth's virus. Jackson stood at the center, hands flying over the controls, locking the ship from inside. The alien crew had lost control and they didn't even know it yet. Beside him, the alien girl sat quietly on the floor. Wrapped in a blanket, she watched everything, eyes wide, still not sure if this was real. All her life, she had seen aliens in charge. Humans treated like pets or slaves too. But now, one human had taken their chaperone. Jackson connected to the speaker system. Attention crew, he said calmly. This ship now belongs to Earth's command. You've trafficked innocent. Lives for too long, and that ends today. All slaves are being released. If you resist, you will be locked out of the system or worse. For a moment, there was silence across the ship. Then chaos exploded. Guards shouted, "Who is that?" The captain, bleeding and tied in the corner, screamed, "Kill the intruder. Kill the human." Doors slammed as Jackson locked down sections of the ship, trapping some guards and opening pathways for others to panic. Down in the slave cargo holds, cages began to unlock. One by one, some prisoners were too weak to stand. Others stared in shock. Was this another trick? But when one brave girl opened her cage door and found no one stopping her, the truth hit. They were free. Jackson turned to the girl beside him. "I need to get to the reactor core to finish this," he said. She looked unsure. Too many guards. She whispered, her voice small and rough. He nodded. "Yeah, but I'm not going alone." She blinked, surprised. He pulled a small tablet from his belt and handed it to her. "You said you grew up on this ship," he said. "I bet you know places even the captain forgot." The girl hesitated, then slowly took the tablet and began tapping. "Air shaft here," she said, pointing, "leads to lower decks. This door. Stuck for years. They don't use it anymore." Her fingers moved faster, confidence returning. Jackson smiled. "Good," he said. "You're my co-pilot now." Together, they planned a route through old maintenance tunnels and unused lifts. She didn't know she could be useful until now. No one had ever asked for her help before. Now, her knowledge was saving lives. Jackson pushed the hover crate again with her inside. Hiding her from cameras, they moved quietly. Staying in the shadows, but not everyone was running in panics. My guards were regrouping, setting up traps. One of them spotted Jackson and raised a blaster. Zop. Jackson ducked and returned fire, hitting the guard in the leg. More came around the corner, and Jackson cursed too many. He turned the crate down another hall and ran. Blasting the floor hatch open, they dropped down into a dark maintenance tunnel, pipes hissing around them. The girl peeked out of the crate, shaken but safe. Jackson breathed hard, wiping sweat from his brow. "This ship's turning into a war zone," he muttered. But in that tunnel, they weren't alone. A small group of slaves had followed them to women, an old alien man, and a child with silver eyes. Are you the human freeing us?" one of them asked. Jackson nodded, surprised. "Yes, but how did you?" "We heard your voice," the old man said. "We've waited years for someone like you." The child looked at the girl in the crate and smiled. "You helped him, didn't you?" The girl said nothing, but a tiny spark of pride lit in her eyes. She nodded once, and the child giggled. They continued through the tunnels, the group growing slowly as more slaves joined Jackson. Handed out old tools, pipes, and scrap metal for defense. "This isn't just a rescue," he said. "This is your ship now, too." They reached a junction near the Cora-sealed door blocked the way. Jackson checked his tools, but the girl stepped forward. "I know this lock," she whispered. "I watched the engineers fix it when I was 10. She knelt beside the panel. Wires sparking, her fingers moved quickly, cutting one wire, twisting another. Then clicked the door opened. Beyond it, guards waited, armed and ready. Jackson stepped forward with his weapon. But before he could fire, the freed slaves charged first. With shouts, they slammed into the guards, knocking them down, stealing weapons, fighting with rage. That had been caged too long. Jackson helped, covering them, taking out any guard who tried to fire on the unarmed. The girl stayed back, watching. Until one guard aimed at Jackson from behind. Without thinking, she grabbed a dropped blaster and fired. The shot hit the guard's shoulder, saving Jackson's life. He turned in shock. Saw her holding the weapon, shaking. She looked at him, terrified of what she had done, but he smiled. "That was amazing," he whispered, and for the first time, she smiled back, a little more than before. Asterisk smoke filled the halls, sparks flew from the ceiling, and alarms screamed in every direction. The slave ship was no longer commit, was chaos, and at the center of that storm, a human soldier and a young alien girl were running for their lives. Jackson carried the girl again, her small arms wrapped tightly around his neck. Behind them, angry voices shouted, boots pounded, and laser fire lit up the corridors. The captain had escaped, furious and wild, yelling to every guard still loyal, "Find the human. Bring the girl back alive. The rest, kill them all." Jackson turned a corner sharply and slid behind a broken cargo door. He lowered the girl gently and whispered, "You okay?" She nodded quickly, her breathing fast. "I'm not going back," she said, her voice firm for the first time. Jackson smiled. "You won't." He peeked through the crack in the door, then checked his blast almost empty. They had to keep moving, but the guards were closing in from all sides. Suddenly, the wall behind them hissed, and a small panel opened. An old alien woman appeared inside the secret crawl space. "Quick. This way," she said, her eyes sharp. "Before they see you." Jackson didn't ask questions. He lifted the girl again and followed the woman into the narrow space. It was dark, hot, and full of steam pipes, but it led them away from the noise. The woman crawled fast, talking quietly. "I was a cleaner for years," she said. "I know the secret paths. They forgot. You freed the others. They're talking about you. They say the girl your girl knows the ship better than anyone." "She's not my girl," Jackson said softly. "She's just someone I won't leave behind." Behind him, the girl's eyes stayed fixed on the dark pipes ahead. She didn't understand what they meant to each other yet, but she knew no one had ever said words like that for her before. They reached a small hatch, and the old woman opened it slowly. "You'll be near the pwn. Gravity control room," she said. "They use it to keep slaves down, turn the gravity high so they can't move." Jackson nodded. "That ends now." The woman vanished into the darkness again, and the two stepped out quietly. But within seconds, a loud voice shouted, "There they are." Blasters fired. Jackson grabbed the girl's hand, and they ran again. Down the stairs, past broken doors, through the flashing lights of the ship's red emergency glow. The girl stumbled, but he caught her, never letting go. More slaves had joined the fight now, blocking guards, shouting warnings, throwing pipes and broken tools. A group of children led them through a side hallway. "We know this way." One of them yelled, "Come on." The girl followed them with wide eyes. These weren't just slaves anymore. They were rebels. Together, they reached the gravity control room. Jackson slammed the door shut behind them and locked it. They were alone, now just him and her, with one last target to hit. The control panel buzzed softly. Dozens of settings, power levels, emergency overrides. It looked complicated. But the girl stepped forward without fear. "I cleaned this room every day," she whispered. "They never thought I could read their language." She reached for the controls, fingers steady, and began turning dials. Flipping switches, typing codes. Jackson watched, impressed. It wasn't just protecting her anymore. She was saving everyone. A moment later, the ship shook. All across the decks, gravity shifted. Heavy guards who had relied on power weight suddenly floated or crashed. Slaves who had been stuck to the ground could now stand and fight. The rebellion had power, now real power, but outside the door, the captain wasn't finished. He activated a ship-wide order. "If we can't take it back, we destroy it. Blow the core. Take them down with us." Jackson heard the voice and turned to the girl. "We need to reach the bridge again." Now, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed his hand, nodded, and led the way. This time, she wasn't hiding. This time, she ran at full speed. They sprinted through the final hallway. Lasers flying past, guards tried to block them, but rebels fought back on every side. Slaves from every corner of the ship had risen up, not because they had weapons, but because they finally had hope. At last, the pair reached the bridge again. Smoke covered the floor. Bodies lay where the first battle happened. But the main screen now flashed bright red. Self-destruct initiated. Jackson rushed to the controls. Typing quickly. "No time," he muttered. "The system is locked." The girl stepped beside him. Eyes calm, she reached for the panel, slid open a secret drawer, and pulled out a small emergency key. "I saw the captain hide this once," she said quietly. He looked at her in awe. "You're incredible." She inserted the key, typed a final code, and pressed the switch. The alarm stopped. The red light faded, and the ship fell silent. Jackson collapsed into the pilot's chair. Exhausted, the girl stood beside him, her hands still trembling, but for the first time, they both knew they had won. The slave ship was quiet now. The alarms had stopped, the lights flickered gently, and the ground no longer shook, but the silence was not peace. It was the moment just before something bigger. Jackson sat in the command chair, staring at the blank screen. The self-destruct had been stopped just in time. The girl had done it, not him. Not Earth Command, her. She stood beside the console, breathing hard, eyes wide. Her small fingers hovered over the keys, still unsure if she had really done it. "You saved us," Jackson said quietly. Still in disbelief, she looked at him, then down. Unsure how to respond, all around the ship, freed slaves began to move again. They found each other, helped the injured, and slowly came out from hiding. The guards who had surrendered were locked in storage cells, and those who resisted were not a problem anymore. The girl walked over to a side panel and pressed a hidden button. A drawer opened inside were more controls. They used this to block external signals. She said softly. Jackson raised an eyebrow. "How do you know that?" She didn't smile. "They made me watch," she whispered. "When the traders didn't want buyers to call in, they used this panel. They thought I was just cleaning floors, but I remembered everything." She bent down and pulled out a data stick from a hidden slot. "This has all the ship logs," she added, holding it out. "Names, buyers, planets, routes." Jackson's jaw clenched as he took it. With this, Earth Command could shut down more slave operations. Not just this one, but the whole chain. "You've done more than most officers on my team," he said. She looked surprised, then proud. "No one ever listened to me before," she said. "They just kicked me or told me to stay quiet." "Well," Jackson replied. They were fools. He smiled, and this time she smiled back, shy but real. Suddenly, a voice crackled through the ship's speaker system. Please, is it over? It was the old alien woman from before. Jackson tapped the panel. It's over. You're safe. Another voice came in, a younger one. We found the weapon storage. What should we do with it? Jackson looked at the girl, and she shrugged. He replied, secure it. Keep only what's needed. We're not pirates. We're survivors. The girl stepped toward the front screen, which now showed space ahead. She stared at the stars for a long time. I've never seen them from here. She whispered, I was always locked below, always watching engines. Never the stars. You're free now, Jackson said. Walking up beside her, she nodded slowly, but her face turned serious. No, she said, not yet. What do you mean? He asked. There are others, she said, turning to him. Other ships, other cages. Other girls who never got lucky like me. Jackson was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down at the console and began typing. What are you doing? She asked. He smiled, sending a message to Earth Command. Message sent to Earth Command. Target ship captured. Logs obtained. One survivor led the resistance, requesting rescue team and supplies, also requesting permission to lead. The next mission? We're not done here. The girl watched him type, her eyes glowing softly with pride. She didn't fully understand everything he was doing, but she knew one thing: he wasn't leaving, not without finishing what they started. Suddenly, the screen blinked a signal from deep space. Jackson frowned. That's not Earth Command. The girl stepped forward, her face pale. I've seen that symbol, she said slowly. It's the buyers. They're coming to collect the cargo. Jackson's eyes narrowed. They think this ship is still theirs. He tapped the ship's weapons console. Then let's give them a surprise. The girl hesitated, then walked over to the console and opened another hidden drawer. What's that? He asked. She smiled just a little. The captain didn't trust the crew, so he had a secret turret system only he could use. I cleaned this room every day. I saw him use it once. Jackson stared at her like she was a miracle. You're full of secrets, huh? She shrugged. I was always watching. They just never looked back. Together, they activated the hidden weapons outside. Turrets unfolded from under the hull like quiet beasts, ready to strike. The girl watched the controls carefully, then said, let them come. A dark shape appeared in the distance. Cold and silent, floating through space. It wasn't a rescue ship from Earth. It was a collector, a buyer ship, coming to claim the slaves. They're early, Jackson muttered. Staring at the radar, the girl beside him gripped the edge of the console, her fingers turning white. They always come quiet, she said, her voice tight so the slaves don't panic. She swallowed. If they dock. We're back in cages. Jackson didn't answer right away. He studied the approaching ship, thinking fast. Its weapons were active, shields up. They weren't here to talk, they were here to take. Jackson turned to the ship's main system and pressed the internal broadcast button. All freed crew report to defense stations. His voice echoed, calm but strong. This is not over. Another ship is coming. We will not surrender. Around the transport ship, former slaves jumped into action. Some helped move power cells. Others ran to engineering rooms. Even children carried supplies or relayed messages. No one hesitated. They had tasted freedom and they weren't going to lose it again. The girl ran down the hallway to the weapon control bay. She had seen the captain fire those turrets many times. She knew how the screen blinked, which button armed the cannons. She reached the controls and started them one by one back on the A. Bridge Jackson strapped himself into the pilot seat. He had flown many ships before, but never one full of survivors counting on him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about sending a message, Let them see what happens when you corner the broken, he whispered. Sometimes they bite back. The enemy ship sent a message. It appeared on screen text only. Prepare for boarding. Cargo ship. Do not resist. You have something that belongs to us. The girl came back. Her face hard. They're talking about me, she said softly. Jackson looked at her. They're wrong. They lost you the moment you stepped out of that cage. She looked at the stars outside, then turned to him. If we run, they'll follow, she said. And next time, they'll take others. Jackson nodded. So we don't run. The two ships floated closer. Then boom. The first blast hit their shields. The girl stumbled but caught herself. They fired without warning. Then we respond, Jackson said. He pressed the button to activate the hidden turret system. The ship came alive. Cannons unfolded, energy hummed, and fire lit up space. The battle began. Red bolts flew across the darkness, lighting up both ships. Turrets locked onto engines, while smaller cannons targeted weapon mounts. The girl stayed at Jackson's side, reading damage reports, rerouting power, and calming those in engineering. They weren't trained fighters, just survivors, but they were fighting for something bigger. Their lives, their chance to be more than cargo. The enemy ship tried to send boarding pods, but the girl rerouted energy to the defense grid and blasted them before they could dock. Jackson turned the transport ship in a wild spin, dodging. Plasma fire, we're holding, he shouted, but not for long. The girl looked at the reactor readings and froze. They hit the main coolant pipe. She said, if it breaks, the engine will explode. Jackson cursed under his breath. We need time, he said. 5 minutes, tops. I can do it, she said suddenly. He turned sharply. What? I used to clean the pipes down there, she said. Already running. I know where the backups are. I can reroute it manually. Jackson stood to follow, but she stopped him. You have to keep the ship flying, she said, her voice trembling. They need you here. Then, softer, and I trust you. To be here when I come back. He wanted to stop her, to protect her, but he saw the strength in her eyes. This was her fight, too. She ran through the ship, flames and sparks chasing her steps. She crawled through tight shafts, past broken panels and hissing steam. Finally, she reached the core, where a thick metal pipe was leaking glowing blue fluid. She grabbed a wrench and opened a pressure valve. The steam burned her arms, but she kept going, twisting knobs, flipping old switches, rerouting coolant lines through emergency ducts. Alarms blared, but then the red light turned green. On the bridge, Jackson saw the change and smiled. She did it, he whispered. With power stable again, the turrets fired with full force. One last blast slammed into the enemy ship's engine. Boom. A ball of fire burst in the black sky, and the ship started drifting crippled. Defeated, cheers echoed through the transport ship. Slaves turned fighters hugged each other, cried, cheered. Jackson turned from the console and ran. He found her. Crawling back up from the core deck, coughing but alive, he knelt beside her. Held her close. You did it, he whispered. You saved us all. She leaned against him, exhausted. I was just tired of being afraid, she said. And I was tired of watching others suffer. Jackson nodded slowly. Then let's make sure no one else suffers again. And they both looked out at the stars, not as prisoners, but as fighters. And maybe, just maybe, as heroes. The battle was over. The enemy ship floated in silence, powerless, drifting into deep space inside the transport ship. Lights flickered gently, systems calmed, and the sound of alarms faded. But the air felt different now. This wasn't a slave ship anymore. It was something else, something reborn. Jackson stood on the bridge, his uniform stained with smoke and sweat. He looked at the stars ahead and finally took a deep breath. Behind him, the crew, no longer slaves, watched quietly. Waiting, many had never stood on the bridge before, never dared to dream of freedom. Now, they were here. Beside Jackson, the girl stood tall, her eyes focused, her burns bandaged, her voice stronger. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. He looked at her and smiled. "You've been on this ship longer than anyone," he said softly. "You know its halls, secrets, its systems." She blinked, not sure where he was going. He stepped aside and motioned toward the captain's chair. "Take it," he said. "You've earned it." Her eyes widened. I'm not a captain," she whispered. Jackson shook his head. "You led people, saved lives, made choices no one else could. You were more than cargo." Even when they couldn't see it, the crew watched silently as she looked at the chair. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. Her hand touched the armrest, trembling just a little. And then, with a breath, she sat. A quiet cheer spread through the room, not loud, not wild, but warm and real. She looked out at the stars and whispered, "Where do we go now?" Jackson leaned over and tapped the controls. "I sent Earth Command the logs." He said, "They know what happened here. They'll be sending ships rescue teams. Maybe warships, maybe news reporters." He looked at her. "They'll ask questions." "About you?" She nodded slowly. "They'll want to know how a child slave became the one who stopped it all." She shrugged. "Let them ask. I have nothing to hide anymore." Suddenly, a voice came through the speaker. It was the old alien woman who had helped them escape. "People are gathering in the cargo bay," she said. "They want to know what's next." Jackson looked to the girl. "They're waiting for your words." The girl stood, heart pounding. She had never spoken to a crowd before, but now she wasn't speaking as a victim. She was speaking as someone who fought back. They walked together to the main deck, where over 100 beings had gathered. Different species, different ages, all once broken. Now standing tall, the girl stepped forward slowly and looked at their faces, tired, scarred, but alive. She took a deep breath and began, "I was born on this ship," she said. "I don't remember my parents, only the cage, I was told. I was weak, worthless, that no one would ever care." She paused, looking around. "But then, one day, someone looked at me." She glanced back at Jackson, who stood near the wall, arms crossed. "He didn't see a number," she continued. "He didn't see cargo. He saw a person. And because of that," she said louder, "I found my voice. I remembered who I was." The crowd was silent, listening. "I'm not the only one," she said, her voice rising. "All of you, you're more than what they did to you. You're strong, you're smart, you're still here." She raised her hand. "This ship is yours now. No one owns you, no one gives you worth, you already have it." A wave of emotion filled the room. Tears fell, heads bowed, hands clapped gently. It was the first time most of them had ever been told they mattered. Later that night, Jackson stood on the upper deck, staring at the stars. The girl walked up beside him. Still in her simple clothes, now wearing a small badge, the symbol of the ship. They stood in silence for a moment. "I used to dream of running," she said, "of disappearing. Now I dream of building." Jackson nodded. "You can take this ship anywhere," he said. "You could run trade, find others in chains, help them, fight back." She looked at him with bright eyes. "Will you stay?" she asked quietly. Jackson smiled. "If you'll have me." She laughed softly. "You're the only one who believed in me. I wouldn't want to fly without you." Above them, the stars blinked gently, endless and free. Below, the ship moved forward, no longer a prison, but a home. A place where no one would ever be locked in a cage again, not while she was captain, and not while the humans stood beside her. Together, they had changed the future, not just for themselves, but for everyone still waiting for someone to say, "You matter."